today. All righty, here we go.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Look down here. Thank you, whoever. All right, so welcome to the Blue Ridge Bigfoot Fest. You all braved the weather and came up the hill to come and watch us, and we totally appreciate that. Thank you so much. My name is Nikki Colon, and I run a Bigfoot channel called Sasquatch Secrets. And my channel's a little bit different. It's not like regular encounter channel. I like to go into the more nefarious part of the Bigfoot community. I talk about a lot of the research, a lot of the investigations. I like to have guests on. And I have a side channel called Sasquatch Dark Secrets, where I have stuff in case YouTube decides to take it down. Don't want it to impact my regular show. But I have a lot of guests around. If you are into the Bigfoot community, then you probably know some of the people I've had on my show. I've had Thomas Steenberg. I've had Brian King Sharp. He runs Sasquatch Odyssey on YouTube. And I've had the infamous Rick Dyer. I don't know, has anybody ever heard of Rick Dyer? He is an infamous Bigfoot hoaxer in our community. So that's some of the stuff I do. And like probably many of you, I got interested in the subject from TV shows, Monster Quest, and Unsolved Mysteries, and In Search of, just like everybody else. But I think the most I did was something they called a library. You know, I would go and get every cryptid book I could get. Loch Ness Monster, Mothman, Bigfoot, and load those up and take them home. And that's kind of where the spark started when I was kind of younger. And then I kind of faded away. Well, many, many years later, I got married. My husband took me abroad to South Korea, and all I had were 10 channels in English. So I went straight to the internet, and I probably watched every Bigfoot program, show, podcast on the internet I could find. And that's how I started to learn about people and how much I was interested in the subject, just for the fact of talking about it. And that's where it all started. So after our 3-year little spurt there abroad, came back home, and I realized that it wasn't just about the story for me. It was a lot more. It was about the science. How could some kind of upright walking bipedal primate be here in the US and not be known to science? So that's where my background kind of came from, is that I want to know it from the science side. And along the way, you learn about the folklore, and you get to have a lot of adventures as well. You know, it gets you out into the forest, glamping or camping, whichever you like to do. And that's kind of how I got started with that. You gotta forgive me, I have notes. So, one of my first expeditions was I threw a little expedition up at Mount St. Helens back in 2023. We called it our Sasquatch Shindig 2023. And I had Thomas Steenberg, Greg Dill, who's known as the Tall Ones. He's a skeptic researcher trying to look for answers. And a bunch of other wonderful, great people who we decided to, let's go camping at Mount St. Helens, where you know is the site of the 8 Canyon story. I don't know if any of you know about the 8 Canyon, where there was a bunch of loggers out there in a cabin, and in the middle of the night they were pummeled with rocks from the forest people. I'm gonna take my jacket off, I'm getting warm. You don't want me to pass out on you? That would be ugly. All right, so typical expedition for Sasquatch stuff. We do a lot of night hikes, a lot of roaming around and looking for evidence. A lot of the time it's not as glamorous as you think it is. What you see on the shows, Finding Bigfoot, Expedition Bigfoot, it's a lot of entertainment. So the real stuff tends to be kind of blah sometimes if you're not into the hiking or the nature or foraging. People who love to forage like to do this type of stuff. So, what do I use the clicker? It's a beautiful area up there. It's very dense forest. A lot of good things you're looking for when you're out looking for Sasquatch. You gotta have food. There has to have, some type of food source, some type of water, and shelter. But one of the biggest things you get out of Sasquatch is the people you meet. You get lifelong friends. We had a wonderful fellowship that occurred, great food. We had 2 barbecue guys out there. We were eating good. I'm telling you, roasts, picanha. If you've never had a meatloaf done in a smoker camping, you have not lived. So we were living it up there, and we had a great time. Thomas Steenberg up there in the corner. Anybody heard of Thomas Steenberg before? He's got about 5 or 6 books out. He's a highly, he's the top of the line. He's one of the great researchers in British Columbia. And so honored to meet him and to have actually walked out in the woods with him. So that's the main question, right? Did anything happen? Did you see Bigfoot? No, I didn't. I didn't see Bigfoot, but I had an experience. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that. So we were up there 5 days. The first 5 were great. Nothing really happened. We got all over the mountain. We explored. When a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound? Yes, it does. Very loud. And you'd think we would be able to get up and find that tree that we heard crash in the middle of the night, but no, we couldn't find it. But it did set us on edge a little bit. And the week went well. We had a great time. No Bigfoot until the last night. 2 of our main researchers, Brent Dill and Thomas Steenberg, decided they had to leave. They had to make it back. Thomas had to make his way back to Canada. Brent had work. So guess what happened? They took all their equipment with them. All the trail cameras, all the audio equipment. My camera was full, my phone was full, everything else we had it was the end of the week. We were packing up, we were already getting ready to break camp. And that very last night, there's Thomas Steenberg. That's the kind of researcher he is. He will get right down on the floor there, and he goes literally inch by inch looking at that track. That's what he's looking at. Now, one thing about pictures and prints, they're not the same as when you're there in person. But there was something there. There was definitely something there. We don't know. It's suspected print. We found some other interesting prints. But then that night happened. That night we're sitting around the fire, and unlike all other 4 nights with nothing, just having fun, we started hearing growls, movement, cracks, steps maybe, mumbling, Now, we did have a babbling brook. You've heard of the, where a little creek runs by and you can almost, the paranoia starts happening and you think you hear what, people talking. So we kind of dismissed some of that to that. But we couldn't get away from the other things we were hearing behind us. And these are just a couple of about 50 shots I took. Of every time I heard a growl, I snapped a shot. And there's nothing there. I don't see anything. We walked. He said there was a laser thing on here. Ooh. We walked right up into this area and back in here. Right here, as you go down, it led to the creek. This is an incline right here. Well, up in here is where we were hearing noises. And me and Dakota here, we walked back there and didn't see anything. We didn't walk too far because there was a drop off at the other end where the creek wound around. So we were like, okay, we kind of thought it might be a bear. And of course we have our bear spray and other things, but nothing. So we came back, sat around there, and again, another growl. Well, I was sitting right here. And I probably moved to the other side of the fire because it was starting to get to me. And that happens a lot when you're out there in the forest. You're real brave and you're strong and you're not afraid of anything, until you start hearing stuff and it starts messing with your brain a little bit. But about maybe 15 more minutes of this and we decided, we got to get up early. We had to head back to Seattle to catch our flights. I flew in to Seattle. So we ended our night. We weren't going to go out there. We didn't have any equipment or proper protection really. And that night starts the lost tapes. The Nikki lost tapes is what some of my friends say. And at approximately 2 a.m. in the morning, I was woken up to hearing something walking around. And I thought, oh God, we got a bear in camp. We left the garbage out. Number one rule, put your garbage up, right? We did not do that last night. And I was thinking in my head, oh my gosh, there's sugar cubes on the table and there's cookies and there's a bag of pretzels behind the bed of the truck. I go, they smelled that and we brought in some bears, or a bear. Because you could hear something going through the trash. And I thought, oh my God, in the morning we're gonna have such a mess to clean up. But I just kept listening, and I could hear this creature in the garbage, walking around, and you saw the little circle where we were sitting. Something went